Hello, welcome to Writing Bull and my second Anno 117 tutorial video. Pax Romana. Up there, the link to the first video is now popping up, a basic tutorial for beginners. If you don't know it yet, I would recommend you watch that first. Also up there in the corner, you'll see the word advertisement. Because Ubisoft, the publisher of the game, had the idea that I should produce such a video for you Anno enthusiasts. The project is supported with a small fee. To start, a few simple tips on city layout. There are service buildings that you will usually place in the center of a city. For example, here a marketplace, a tavern, and a building for the second population group. A grammar problem. At the beginning of a game, you don't yet know exactly how many tiles wide and long it will be. Just leave plenty of space in the middle, better a bit more than too little, then you'll have enough room for all the buildings. The largest of these buildings from the first two levels is the Grammaticus, which is 8 tiles long and 6 tiles wide. These buildings distribute their services across the roads, the levels. The same also applies to certain production buildings. Here with the plebeians, with the Liberty. A simple example for the P-Lady pointed hats. Here, I've already placed several of these pointed hat buildings all over, recognizable by the symbols that pop up when you try to place another building. You see an attribute and an area effect. Attribute value means that no matter where this building is located, as long as there is a residential building, it will receive this good. And for that, it's simply the total amount produced on the island that's responsible. If it's enough as long as the buildings are supplied with it. In this example, do you get a bit more income, a bit more satisfaction? But there's also the area impact. It works just like the marketplace or the tavern through the roads, meaning the buildings, like this one for example, distribute their area effect through the roads. There are two ways you can place these production buildings. Either you put them in the center as well and cover as many of them as possible. Then you definitely need a warehouse nearby. Because no matter where a production building is located, there always has to be a warehouse nearby. Another model could be to place such production buildings in the corners and a warehouse nearby. And then you could combine these two models or try another option. You might say, I don't even need the area effects. In my opinion, that's especially recommended when certain production buildings also have negative effects. If in doubt, don't stress yourself out. Just place it somewhere else, then you don't have to worry about things like that. However, if you've already settled more than one island, you have a convenient alternative way to plan your island. For example, here, after you've already laid out the basic roads, just draw a road straight into the center of the picture, into the middle of the island. Then, for example, when building residences switch to planning mode, this is available for all buildings. At the bottom right, you can click it on and off. If it's clicked on, buildings will appear as screens, as shadows, as planning drafts. You can then lay them out like this. And if you've already unlocked the marketplace on another island, you can go ahead and place it here in the center. And take a close look at how many tiles it unlocks, how many tiles this marketplace needs. If you hold down the copy tool, it's down here. You can place multiple buildings at once, and that way you can build buildings faster. My recommendation is, with the middle mouse button you can rotate, that you build out in a T-shape from the central service buildings. So like this, and not like I did up here, because the supply for the service or production buildings in the middle is provided via roads. And if you build a road here, and then build the buildings wide and deep like this, then you'll be able to reach fewer buildings from the marketplace than if you build down in a T-shape, because then the roads are simply built in a way that more buildings can be reached. If you don't believe me, just try it out for yourselves. If you let the buildings branch off vertically from all sides, you can usually reach more buildings. In addition to the service buildings and production buildings, your residents also need access to the so-called city guards. You can access them by clicking on the bell icon at the bottom. There are mainly these three here: the city guard, the vigiles, who are responsible for firefighting, and the custodia, who deal with riots. So basically that's the police companies, the Medici, who treat diseases in the city for that purpose. Accordingly, in the top right, there are also these three symbols for island health, island satisfaction, and island fire safety. Attention, even if these values are very positive, it can still lead to negative events popping up from time to time. Therefore, even if the fire safety protection is a high 3-digit or even 4-digit value, fires will still break out from time to time. That's not a bug, that's just a game mechanic. It's just that these fires will occur less frequently and won't be as severe. Conversely, the more negative a value is, the more frequently things like plagues will occur, as in this case, and the worse they will be. Where should you place these city guards, and what effect do they have? They have two effects. One is that the more firefighting buildings you have on your island, for example, the higher the value for fire safety will be. So fires will happen less frequently and they will be less severe. The second effect is that within the range of these buildings, if a fire breaks out, for example, firefighters will run out to the affected buildings, or doctors in the case of a medical building, or police officers, city guards in the case of a security building, and they will then be dispatched to make sure that fires are stopped or riots are stopped. Still, it's not absolutely necessary for every little bit of your islands to actually be covered by these buildings. That usually won't even be the case, because you'll have some production buildings in certain places. If there's a fire somewhere, those buildings will just be destroyed, but you can rebuild them later. Here, for example, is a ruin. Over time, it will restore itself. However, you can also speed this up by clicking on instant repair. So that means it's actually recommended not to cover your entire island with these three buildings. Otherwise, you'll get bogged down, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad governor or anything. Very soon you'll have more than just one island, and then you'll want to transport goods from one island to another. You can do this with ships, either manually or automatically. If you do it manually, it will say manual ship, and then you sail it to the starting building, and then click on the goods transfer menu button. There you can move goods from right to left. At the bottom, there's a setting for how many goods you want to transport. The infinity symbol usually means that 50 goods will be transferred. Another possibility, however, is that this simply creates automated trade routes. The simplest way is to click on trade routes on the left, then at the bottom click on create new trade route, then assign a ship. The more of these box symbols or crate symbols a ship has, the more different types of goods, the more goods in total can be transported. Let's select the ship, the favorites, then we click on one of our islands, for example, here we are in Albion. I'll click over to Latium. I'll click on Taurus, that's our main island, and then another island we want to transport to. Then we click on the corresponding goods. There are filter functions here, so all goods are listed. These are the needs, meaning the consumer goods that people directly use on your islands. This is the building material. Then there are two types of raw materials. These are the non-agricultural raw materials, and these are the agricultural raw materials. And if you have longer supply chains, then you might have intermediate products, which are listed here. If you want to transport something there, then you click on it. Then it usually appears up here in the slot with a value of 50 units. And down here you can also click on the counterpart. That will also be unloaded again. You can do that up to 4 times with a ship like this, which has 4 slots. Of course, you can also use fewer of the slots or use multiple slots for the same goods. What occurs on a trade route? Goods are automatically loaded if available, and automatically unloaded as long as there is still space in the warehouse. You can set it up within, then of course you have to confirm it via setup route, and then the route is operational. If you want to prevent your warehouses from running empty, if too many goods are being transported away, you basically have two options. I think they're a bit harder to manage in the trade routes menu. We could just say maybe only take 10 goods on each trip, or 20, right? I think that's the more convenient and simple option. Click on the account, in the middle there's the goods tab, and then select the corresponding good, for example planks here. And simply define a minimum stock level by moving the slider or by entering the desired quantity in the number menu here. That means whenever any trade route passes by here, any transport route, there will always be a certain minimum amount left, the one you set, and it can't be transported away. You can also trade through this. That means you can say, for example, if there are less than 50 units of this good, then it should automatically be bought from AI traders. There are traveling merchants who go along the route, and with a bit of luck they'll supply you with the corresponding goods. It also works the other way around, so you can sell surpluses by defining it accordingly here. This on the right means buying and selling so that it stays around 50. And the easiest way here, of course, is simply no trading, produce everything yourself, be self-sufficient, and to transport the goods from one island to another using the minimum stock option. Many Anno beginners have a hard time making a profit. Initially everything is fine and you spend some money on the first buildings. Service buildings, ships, troops, and production buildings all have ongoing maintenance costs. But at some point it suddenly jumps from the first population level to the second. Later buildings cost much more to maintain than the first level, and often the killer for players, the reason they can't really progress, there's usually a simple reason and a simple trick to prevent that. Many players build up too quickly and don't keep the play wide long enough. What do I mean by that? Certain service buildings, like here for example the marketplace, have a large radius. If you say I won't cover it completely, I'll just place a few buildings around it and then want to quickly move on to the second tier. Basically you're giving away tax revenue. The service building always costs the same amount of maintenance, no matter how big it is or how many buildings are connected to it. That means if you want to invest the cost of the service building wisely, you should use the entire radius around it and build lots and lots of smaller, lower level buildings around it. They all provide small tax revenues. It's not a huge amount, but it leads to making a profit. Of course, you also have to produce more goods for them, but it's simple. The more buildings you have, the more goods are produced and the higher the costs. But it's still just a small bonus that you get provided you use these service buildings efficiently. And if it ever happens that you have large surpluses and don't know what to do with them, then always bring up the statistics screen from time to time with Storgen and Q, and especially, but not only, check the goods that fulfill needs. Check if the green bars are longer, wider than the white bars. If the green bars are much longer, that means you're producing too much. Then go into the office of the respective island, set up automatic trading, and make sure that surpluses are sold. We just talked about trade routes, now we're talking about ships in the shipyard. As you can see here, you can produce ships. There are two columns here. The left column is for civilian ships, meaning unarmed ships that you can only use to transport goods. The right column is for warships. At the beginning, some of the advanced large ships are still grayed out. Through research in the technology screen, you gradually unlock the large and powerful ships. To be able to build a ship, you need a certain number of sailors. They are usually recruited from the Liberty, that is, from the lower population group. A ship also requires ongoing maintenance, a certain construction time and building costs, a sum of money and specific goods. You also have to produce those here. Those are mainly ropes and sails, and there are corresponding production chains for them. Attention, you can further specialize your ships using this gear symbol. For the first time in the Anno series, it's possible for you to design your own ships. This here is a very, very simple ship, for example. It has 2 free slots that you can fill with modules. You can't place war modules on this civilian ship, but you could, for example, say that a ship's rudder will be added. This allows the ship to move faster even against the wind. It's just a bit more maneuverable, a bit more independent on its journey. You can also reinforce the ship's hull if desired. Then a ship has more hit points and won't be sunk by pirates so quickly. Attention, if you add that, then the construction costs and also the maintenance costs will increase. As you can clearly see, he needs more money. However, the same number of sailors remain on board. But with more oars, you also need more sailors to row, which raises maintenance costs. If you click on Save, you will overwrite the developer's default design, and from now on, this new ship will be permanently available to you. You could have also given it a unique name. Where do ships spawn? You click on the shipyard, right-click on the water, and wherever you click, that's where all newly built ships will spawn. On each of your islands, you will eventually build a villa, which is the place where you, as the governor, will reside in style. The villa has economic effects, for one thing. You can see a green street radius around it here and many green arrows pointing upwards. This is the area where the specialists housed in the villa exert their positive effects. There are a certain number of specialist spots, and you can fill them with guests who are well-known personalities. You can get these specialists either by accepting and successfully completing quests, or by clicking on these small white symbols on the minimap and hovering over one of the non-player character merchants you've discovered. There you can buy these merchants under the Items tab. They come with different effects and different background colors. The color indicates how rare the respective specialist is and how expensive it is to recruit them. As you can see above, rarer items are more expensive and have cooler effects. If you have extra money left and aren't satisfied with the selection, click Renew. That costs a certain amount and the selection up here will be refreshed. But now let's go back to our villa and to what we can do there with our specialists. There's also the option, if you ever have more specialists than spaces, to say, I'll build an annex to the villa, an officia, a branch office which must not have its radius overlap with the area of influence of the villa. You can then place it somewhere, for example here in planning mode. Once it's built, of course you have to connect it to the warehouse with a road, and there are also spots available here for several specialists. How do you get officias, when can you build them, and how many can you build? That happens through the general development of your island, through the reputation, the prestige that you gain. The more prestige you have, the more of these officias you can build. On the left, there's the reputation display. The harbour symbol, that's the prestige you get when you play successfully. If you've built lots of cool buildings, maybe even place some nice ornaments for decoration. The bar fills up and more officia slots will be offered to you. In Anno 117 there is ship combat. You can send your ships into battle against pirates, for example, but there is also land combat. You can, for example, raise and deploy troops like these castle archers and control them across the map, just like in a real-time strategy game. It's simple, just click once and move them with a right click. You can also patrol, attack, whatever you want. You can also send them on board ships. If a ship, a transport ship, is within range, just right-click on it, it will move closer, the troops will walk over, and the troops will board the ship. And in a similar way, you can also be unloaded at your enemy's islands. An island is considered conquered when the central villa falls. You absolutely have to defend it, and you can do that by building these protective walls. This way you can't prevent your fate of being conquered, but you can delay it a bit. There you can raise troops to defend you, and you can build towers like this wooden archer tower. With the towers, a certain amount of manpower and upkeep is also used up there. Just like with ships and just like with land troops, the better the towers are, the better the troops are, the more upkeep it costs. You can recruit basic troops in the villa. Here is the reserves tab. You unlock new troop types through the military branch of research, which means here on the right side, military. Here the network of different researchers branches out, and at the nodes these new troops are located. You can also unlock many upgrades for your troops so that they get better stats. Additionally, you can later unlock a barracks, which is this building here and here. Recruit even more advanced units. That was my little guide for advanced players. There will be many more videos on the topic of Anno 117 Pax Romana Let's Plays, which I record live on Twitch for YouTube. They have a tutorial character. I always explain my actions and reasons. If you don't want to miss such videos, feel free to subscribe and click the bell. Otherwise, have fun and enjoy playing Anno 117 yourself.